The gun pressed against Zara's spine as Kai's body pinned her against the wall, his breath hot against her neck. Blood from his split lip dripped onto her bare shoulder. Yes, she had done that. She had slapped him hard enough to draw blood when he tried to lock her in the penthouse again. You never listen, Kai growled, his free hand tangling in her hair, pulling her head back to expose her throat. I told you not to leave. I told you it wasn't safe. And I told you, she hissed, grinding back against him just to feel him harden, just to prove her point, that I'm not your prisoner. The gun traced down her spine, cold metal against burning skin. You're my wife. Same thing, isn't it? He spun her around, slamming her back against the wall. The gun now pressed under her chin. His eyes were black with rage and something else. Something that made her thighs clench. 3 months of marriage. 3 months of this violent dance where they circled each other like wounded predators, wanting to destroy each other, wanting to devour each other. I should kill you, he whispered, his thumb brushing over her bottom lip. You're going to get yourself killed anyway with your stubbornness. Then do it. She opened her mouth and took his thumb in, sucking it. She watched his control fracture as she did. Or fuck me. But make a choice, dear mafia husband, because I'm tired of this game. The gun clattered to the floor. Then Kai's mouth crashed into hers, all teeth and rage and desperate hunger. She bit his already split lip harder, tasting blood. And he groaned into her mouth like she was killing him. I hate you, she gasped as he hiked her dress up. I hate you more, he growled, lifting her against the wall. But their bodies had never gotten the memo about the hatred. If you want to know how a stubborn woman brought Seoul's most dangerous mafia don to his knees, and why they can't decide if they want to kill each other or fuck each other senseless, hit that subscribe button now. Because this story is about to get very filthy. Now, let's rewind 3 months before this day. The limousine smelled like leather and danger as Zara sat across from her father, watching Atlanta disappear through tinted windows. She'd been given exactly 12 hours' notice. Pack your things. You're getting married. The family needs this. He's powerful, her father had said, not meeting her eyes. The Park family controls most of East Asia's underground. This alliance will save us. You mean selling me will save you? She held up a manicured hand, her voice deadly calm. Let's call this what it is. You fucked up, got in debt with the wrong people, and now you're trading your daughter like cattle. The wedding happened 2 days later in Seoul. No time to run. No time to plan an escape. 500 guests she didn't know watched her walk down an aisle in a dress she hadn't chosen toward a man she'd never met. Kai Park stood at the altar like a statue carved from marble and malice. Tall, devastatingly handsome, and completely emotionless. When the officiant asked if she took this man to be her husband, Zara looked directly into his dark eyes and said yes with all the warmth of a funeral dirge. His lips twitched. Whether in amusement or annoyance, she couldn't tell. The reception was a blur of bowing strangers speaking languages she didn't understand. Kai didn't dance with her, didn't speak to her, didn't acknowledge her existence until they were alone in his penthouse. Our arrangement is simple, he said, pouring himself a whiskey. You stay out of my way. I stay out of yours. The marriage is business. Nothing more. And if I refuse? He looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes swept over her wedding dress, taking in her defiant posture, her raised chin. Then you'll learn why people fear me. That first night, she slept alone in a guest room. The second night, too. For weeks, they lived like polite strangers. He left early, came home late. She explored the penthouse, tested boundaries, planned escapes that would never work. She was a bird in a very luxurious cage. It might have stayed that way if not for Park Industries' quarterly gala. Zara had been expected to attend as the dutiful wife. Smile pretty, speak when spoken to, be the perfect accessory. Instead, she'd worn a red dress that hugged every curve, danced with every man who asked, and laughed loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear. She'd been having fun. Real fun for the first time since arriving in Seoul. Right up until she felt a familiar hand wrap around her wrist. Excuse us, Kai said to her dance partner, his voice pleasant enough to fool someone who didn't know him. His grip on her wrist was anything but pleasant. He marched her out of the ballroom, through corridors she hadn't known existed, until they reached his private office. The door slammed behind them with finality. You're embarrassing me, he said, finally letting go of her wrist. She rubbed at the red marks his fingers had left. Good. Maybe you'll understand how I've felt every day since you bought me. I didn't buy you. Your father sold you. Details, she snapped. The result is the same. I'm your prisoner. You're my wife. Your reputation reflects on me. My business depends on respect. And what about what I need? What about my reputation? My life? His jaw clenched. You have everything you could want. A home, money, safety. Everything except freedom. Everything except choice. Everything except being treated like a human being instead of property. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been guilt. But it was gone so quickly she thought she'd imagined it. This is the life you have now, he said. You can fight it and be miserable, or accept it and find some measure of peace. And if I refuse to accept it, then you'll be miserable. That was the night everything changed. Zara had gone back to her room, rage burning in her chest like acid. She'd thrown things. Expensive things. A crystal vase that had probably cost more than most people made in a year shattered against the marble wall. It felt good. So she'd thrown something else. A lamp this time. Then a picture frame. By the time Kai burst through her door, she'd done considerable damage. His dark eyes took in the destruction, then landed on her. She was breathing hard, a shard of crystal in her hand, a thin line of blood running down her palm where she'd gripped it too tightly. You're bleeding, was all he said. She looked down at her hand as if surprised to see the blood. Fuck, she whispered, suddenly dizzy. The crystal clattered to the floor as her knees gave out. She expected him to call for his housekeeper. Expected him to leave her to clean up her own mess. Instead, Kai crossed the room in 3 strides and caught her before she hit the ground. His arms were gentle as he carried her to the bathroom, setting her on the marble countertop. This might sting, he said, cleaning the cut with antiseptic. His touch was careful, professional. When had her dangerous mafia husband learned first aid? You could have seriously hurt yourself, he murmured, wrapping her palm in gauze. Why do you care? The question slipped out before she could stop it. He paused, his hand still holding hers. I don't know, he said quietly. And that honesty, that moment of vulnerability, cracked something open in her chest. They stared at each other in the bathroom light, her hand in his, the space between them charged with something neither wanted to acknowledge. Then his phone rang. Business. Always fucking business. He stepped away, answering in rapid Korean, and the moment was gone. But something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, Zara noticed changes. Small ones. Kai asking if she needed anything before he left in the morning. Fresh flowers appearing in her room. Her favorite coffee stocked in the kitchen. She tested him. Stayed out late shopping. Came home with bags full of expensive things she didn't need. He didn't comment. She redecorated the living room without permission. He didn't comment. She invited her old college friend to visit from Atlanta. He arranged security and made sure she felt welcome. Each act of defiance met with careful accommodation. Each test met with infinite patience. It was infuriating. She wanted him to fight back. Wanted him to show his true colors. Wanted to prove he was the monster she'd convinced herself he was. Instead, he was kind, thoughtful, quietly protective in ways that made her chest ache. It was during her friend Maya's visit that everything finally came to a head. Maya had been asking questions. Hard questions about Zara's marriage, her life, whether she was happy. Zara had deflected them all. But when Maya left, when the penthouse was quiet again, the questions lingered. Was she happy? She didn't know. She wasn't miserable anymore. Somewhere along the way, the cage had started feeling less like a prison and more like home. And that terrified her more than anything Kai had ever done. She'd been so lost in thought that she hadn't heard him come home. Didn't know he was there until she felt his presence behind her on the balcony. Your friend seems nice, he said, joining her at the railing. She is. She's worried about me. She thinks I'm in danger. Are you, he asked. Asking me if you're dangerous. I'm asking if you feel safe. With me. The question hung in the air between them. Zara turned to look at him. Really look at him. In the city lights, he looked younger somehow. Less like the untouchable mafia boss and more like just a man. A man who'd been nothing but patient with her impossible behavior. A man who'd tended her wounds and asked for nothing in return. A man who'd given her freedom within the confines of their arrangement and never once made her feel like a burden. I don't know, she said honestly. You could destroy me if you wanted to. So could you, he said quietly. How could I possibly destroy you? You're Kai Park. You have all the power. His laugh was soft, sad. You think so? Zara, you've had me off balance since the moment you walked down that aisle. Everything about you terrifies me. How you challenge me. How you make me want things I've never wanted. How you make me question everything I thought I knew about myself." She stared at him, heart hammering. "What kinds of things?" "Things like coming home early because I want to see you. Things like caring whether you're happy. Things like wanting this marriage to be real instead of just business." Her breath caught. "Kai, don't," he said, stepping back. "I shouldn't have said that. The marriage contract doesn't include my feelings." "Screw the contract." The words were out before she could stop them. "What if I wanted to be real too?" He went very still. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I'm not. I've been fighting this for months, convinced you were the enemy. Convinced I was a victim. But you've never once made me feel like anything other than your equal. Even when I was destroying your things and embarrassing you in public, you treated me with respect." "I don't know how to be a good husband," he said quietly. "I only know how to be what my father trained me to be. Ruthless. Controlled. Dangerous. Then learn with me. Learn to be something different. Something better." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light. "If we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back. I won't let you leave. I won't want to leave. You say that now. But when you see what I'm really capable of, when the novelty wears off, when you realize what kind of life you'd actually be choosing, then I'll choose it anyway," she said firmly. "Because I'm not afraid of you, Kai. I'm not afraid of the darkness in you. I've got plenty of my own." His control finally snapped. He kissed her against the balcony railing, months of suppressed want and careful distance exploding into desperate hunger. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you," she whispered, the words falling out before she could think better of them. The admission hung between them, raw and vulnerable. For a terrifying moment, she thought she'd ruined everything. Then Kai's hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than my empire. More than my life. More than my soul." The kiss that followed was different. Softer. Full of promise and possibility and a future neither of them had dared to imagine. When he lifted her, carrying her inside to their bedroom, not the guest room she'd been sleeping in, but their bedroom, Zara felt like she was finally coming home. Later, as dawn broke over Seoul, they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like sex and new beginnings. "Any regrets?" Kai asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Just one," she said. His body tensed. "I should have slapped you harder that first time. Maybe we would have figured this out sooner." His laugh was rich, dark, everything she loved about him. "You can slap me anytime you want, wife. Careful. I might take you up on that. I'm counting on it." She turned in his arms, the morning sun painting her skin gold. "So what now?" He lifted her onto the balcony railing, stepping between her thighs. "Now I'm going to fuck my wife on this balcony where all of Seoul can see who you belong to. Anyone could see. That's the point." His hands pushed her dress up. "Let them see. Let them know that the stubborn woman who never listens, who drives me insane, who nearly gets herself killed daily. Let them know she's mine. You're insane. You'll ruin me. You made me that way, and you wanted me to ruin you. Wanted me to fuck you until you cannot walk again. Give me permission," he commanded, fingers already finding her. "Say yes, Zara." She gasped as he worked her with his tongue and his fingers. As he claimed her there, high above the city he ruled, Zara thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. An arranged marriage between enemies. 3 months of violent foreplay disguised as hatred and a love born from stubbornness and spite. She'd married the devil himself, thinking it was a prison sentence. Instead, she'd found a man who'd burn the world for her, and she'd burn it right back for him. If you made it to the end, comment stubborn below and tell me, should I continue Zara and Kai's story? Because these two are far from done driving each other crazy. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more dark romances that'll leave you breathless and desperate for more. Until next time, lovers, stay stubborn, stay dangerous, and never ever listen to orders. I love you all so much. 6 months later, their penthouse had become a battlefield of unspoken desires and carefully controlled chaos. Zara had learned to navigate Kai's empire with the skill of a seasoned diplomat, attending charity galas where blood money masqueraded as philanthropy, smiling for cameras while knowing the man beside her could end lives with a single word. She'd also learned that beneath the ruthless exterior, Kai Park was far more complex than anyone realized. He remembered how she liked her coffee, silently replaced books she'd mentioned wanting to read, and had quietly arranged for her art supplies to be shipped from Atlanta without her asking. These small gestures created cracks in the armor she'd built around her heart, making it harder to maintain the careful distance that kept them both safe. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November. Zara had been painting in the studio Kai had commissioned for her, losing herself in bold strokes of crimson and gold when raised voices echoed from his office. She'd learned enough Korean over the months to catch fragments. Business deal gone wrong. Territory disputes. Someone questioning Kai's judgment about keeping an American wife. She set down her brush and moved closer to the door, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. Through the crack, she could see Kai standing behind his desk, his posture rigid with controlled fury. 3 men sat across from him, their suits expensive but their voices sharp with challenge. One of them, silver-haired and bearing scars that spoke of violence survived, was speaking rapidly in Korean. But it was the way he gestured toward the penthouse, toward where Zara lived, that made her blood run cold. They were talking about her, about how she was a liability, a weakness that enemies could exploit. The silver-haired man stood, his voice rising, and Zara caught enough words to understand. He was questioning Kai's fitness to lead, suggesting that his American wife had made him soft, compromised. The suggestion hung in the air like poison. Kai's response was swift and brutal. He moved around the desk with predatory grace, backing the man against the wall. His voice when he spoke was deadly quiet, but every word carried the weight of absolute authority. He spoke in rapid Korean, but the meaning was clear even to Zara. The man had crossed a line, and Kai was drawing new boundaries in blood if necessary. The meeting ended with the 3 men leaving hastily, their faces pale with the realization that they'd miscalculated badly. Kai remained standing by the window long after they'd gone, his shoulders tense, his reflection in the glass showing a man carrying the weight of an empire and a marriage he'd never wanted but couldn't seem to let go. Zara retreated to her studio, her hands shaking as she tried to process what she'd witnessed. She'd known intellectually that her presence in Kai's life created complications, but seeing the challenge to his authority, hearing the doubt in his lieutenants' voices, made the reality crushingly clear. She was endangering him simply by existing in his world. That night, she couldn't sleep. She wandered the penthouse, ending up in the kitchen where she found Kai standing at the island, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He looked up when she entered, his dark eyes unreadable in the dim light. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. "Some of it," she admitted, moving to stand across the island from him. "They think I make you vulnerable." "They think many things," he replied, his voice carefully neutral. "Most of them wrong. But not that," she said quietly. "I do make you vulnerable, don't I? Being married to me, having to protect me, it puts you in an impossible position." Kai was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. "In my world, weakness is death. My father taught me that before I could walk. Show weakness, show doubt, show anything that makes others think you can be broken, and you won't survive the week. And having a wife you care about, that's the ultimate weakness, isn't it?" She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the penthouse. "Because if someone wants to destroy you, all they have to do is hurt me." He set down the whiskey and moved around the island, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the tension in his jaw. "You're right," he said simply. "Having you here, caring about what happens to you, it is a weakness. It's the first weakness I've allowed myself since I took over from my father." "So what do we do?" she whispered. "How do we fix this?" His hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing over her cheekbones in a gesture that had become familiar over the months. "We don't," he said, "because some weaknesses are worth the risk." The kiss that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't desperate or hungry or born of months of suppressed desire. It was soft, deliberate, a promise and a choice made in full knowledge of the consequences. When they broke apart, Zara rested her forehead against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the expensive fabric of his shirt. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of you, not of this life, but of what loving you might cost both of us. Then we'll be scared together, he murmured into her hair. And we'll face whatever comes together too. The next morning brought news that would test their resolve. Chen Wei, one of Kai's oldest rivals, had made overtures about a meeting. Business, officially, but everyone knew Chen's reputation for finding creative ways to eliminate competition. He was also known for his particular interest in collecting beautiful things, and rumors had already reached Seoul about Kai's striking American wife. The meeting was set for the following week at a neutral location, a private dining room in one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels. It would be a public enough venue to ensure no immediate violence, but private enough for serious negotiations or serious threats. Kai spent the week in preparation, his schedule packed with strategy meetings and contingency planning. Zara found herself largely excluded from these preparations, relegated to the periphery of a game whose rules she was still learning. It wasn't until the night before the meeting that Kai came to her with a request that made her blood freeze. I need you to come with me tomorrow, he said without preamble. To the meeting with Chun Wei. The words hit her like ice water. You want me to walk into a room with a man who probably wants to kill you, and whose interest in me could be used against both of us? Yes, Kai replied, his voice steady. Because showing up without you sends a message that I'm ashamed of you, that you're something I hide. It makes you look like a guilty secret rather than my wife. And showing up with me makes it clear that you're mine, completely and publicly. It draws a line that Shin will understand, even if he chooses to cross it anyway. Zara stared at him, trying to process the layers of strategy and risk involved. You're gambling with both our lives on the chance that publicly claiming me will deter him rather than provoke him. I'm gambling with both our lives on the certainty that hiding you will definitely provoke him, she corrected. Shin respects strength, despises weakness. A man who hides his wife appears weak. A man who presents his wife as an equal partner appears confident in his power. The next evening found Zara standing before her closet, trying to choose an outfit for what might be the most dangerous dinner of her life. She finally settled on a midnight blue dress that was elegant without being provocative, professional without being cold. She wanted to look like exactly what she was, a woman who belonged at Kai's side without apology or explanation. The private dining room was all understated luxury, crystal and silver and soft lighting designed to make even the most dangerous conversations feel civilized. Chun Wei was already seated when they arrived, flanked by two men who didn't bother to hide the bulges of concealed weapons. Chun himself was smaller than Zara had expected, dressed in an immaculate gray suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His smile was polite and predatory as he rose to greet them. Mr. and Mrs. Park, he said in accented English, his eyes lingering on Zara with uncomfortable intensity. How lovely to finally meet the woman who has captured Seoul's most eligible bachelor. Zara felt Kai's hand tighten almost imperceptibly on her waist as he guided her to her seat. The message was subtle but clear, a reminder of possession that Chin absorbed with obvious amusement. The dinner that followed was a masterclass in civilized warfare. Conversation flowed smoothly over multiple courses, touching on business, politics, mutual acquaintances, anything except the real reason they were all there. Chun was charming, intelligent, and utterly ruthless in his subtle probing for weaknesses. He asked Zara about her adjustment to life in Seoul, her thoughts on Korean culture, her plans for the future. Each question carried multiple layers of meaning, testing not just her responses, but Kai's reactions to having his wife questioned by a potential enemy. It was during the main course that Chin made his move. You know, Mrs. Park, he said casually while cutting his beef with surgical precision. I have been wondering about the security arrangements for your little art exhibitions. Surely a woman of your prominence requires careful protection when moving around the city. The threat was delicately phrased but unmistakable. Zara felt her pulse spike, but forced herself to meet Chin's eyes steadily. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Chun, she replied, her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her veins. But I have complete confidence in my husband's ability to ensure my safety, as I hope you do as well. The subtle counter-threat hung in the air. Chin's smile widened, and for a moment Zara thought she'd overplayed her hand. Then he laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. Excellent, he said, raising his wine glass in a mock toast. I do so appreciate a woman who understands the game she's playing. The rest of the dinner passed without further incident, but the message had been sent and received on all sides. As they prepared to leave, Chen stood and offered his hand to Kai in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "It was a pleasure meeting your wife," he said quietly, his voice carrying just far enough for Zara to hear. "She is exactly as lovely and intelligent as reported. Do give my regards to your father's old associates. They will be so interested to hear about this evening." The drive home was silent, both Zara and Kai lost in their own thoughts about what had just transpired. It wasn't until they were safely back in the penthouse that Kai finally spoke. "You did well tonight," he said, loosening his tie with hands that were almost steady. "You handled Chen perfectly." "I don't feel like I handled anything perfectly," Zara replied, sinking onto the sofa with exhaustion she'd been fighting all evening. "I feel like I just painted a target on both our backs." "Chen was going to be a problem regardless of what happened tonight," Kai said, moving to pour himself a drink. "At least now he knows that threatening you means declaring war on me personally, not just professionally. And that makes things better." "How exactly?" "Because now the rules are clear," Kai replied, turning to face her with something dangerous flickering in his dark eyes. "Chen understands that any move against you is a move against me. And I understand that he's already made his position clear." "Which means what, exactly?" "It means," Kai said, his voice dropping to the deadly quiet tone she'd learned to recognize as his most dangerous, "that Chen Wei just made the last mistake of his very short remaining life." The words sent a chill through Zara that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the realization that she'd just witnessed her husband promise murder with the casual certainty of a man ordering coffee. In that moment, the full reality of who she'd married, what world she'd entered, crystallized with startling clarity. 3 days after the dinner with Chen Wei, Kai's prediction proved accurate in the worst possible way. The attack came at dawn, precise and brutal, targeting one of Kai's smaller warehouses on the outskirts of Seoul. 2 of his men were killed, millions of dollars in legitimate merchandise destroyed, and a message was left in Chen's distinctive style. But it was the second part of Chen's response that turned Kai's controlled anger into something far more dangerous. Photos arrived by courier, surveillance shots of Zara leaving the penthouse, shopping in Gangnam, having coffee with the wife of one of Kai's business associates. The message was clear. Chen had eyes on her, could reach her whenever he chose, and Kai's protection wasn't as absolute as he believed. Zara found Kai in his study that evening, surrounded by maps, photographs, and the grim paraphernalia of war planning. He looked up when she entered, and she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach drop. "It's time," he said simply. "Time for what?" "For you to leave Seoul. Tonight." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You're sending me away. To keep you alive?" "Yes. Chen has made it clear that you're not safe here. I've arranged for you to go to Tokyo, then Los Angeles. You'll have protection, money, everything you need to start over." "And you?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from the set of his shoulders, the finality in his voice. "I stay here and finish this. One way or another, Chen Wei stops being a problem. Permanently." Zara moved closer, her heart breaking at the pain she could see beneath his determined facade. "How long?" she whispered. "How long until it's safe for me to come back?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hands clenched on the desk. "I don't know," he admitted. "This kind of war, it doesn't end quickly. And there's no guarantee. No guarantee you'll win. No guarantee I'll survive it. No guarantee either of us will be the same people if and when it's over." The brutal honesty of his assessment left them both silent. Zara reached for his hands, covering his clenched fists with her palms. "What if I don't want to leave?" she said quietly. "What if I want to stay and fight this together?" "Then you'll die," he replied, his voice breaking slightly on the words. "And I'll die knowing that my weakness, my inability to let you go, was what killed you. That's not acceptable. Neither is spending the rest of my life wondering if you're alive or dead," she shot back. "Neither is building something real between us only to have it destroyed by someone else's ambition. This isn't a choice, Zara. It's survival. Yours and mine." She pulled her hands away, straightening to face him with all the determination she could muster. "Then make it a choice," she said firmly. "Trust me enough to be part of this instead of something you have to protect from it. Use me as the asset I could be instead of treating me like a liability you have to hide." For a moment, Hope flickered in his eyes, quickly extinguished by harsh reality. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand exactly what I'm asking, she replied. I'm asking you to treat me like your partner instead of your possession. I'm asking you to let me help you end this instead of running away from it. The argument that followed was fierce and painful, voices raised for the first time in months of careful politeness. But when it ended, when they stood facing each other across the study with the weight of everything unsaid between them, Kai's decision was unchanged. The car would come for her at midnight. She had 2 hours to pack and say goodbye to the life they'd built together. I love you, he said as she reached the door, the words torn from him like a confession under torture. That's why I can't let you stay. I love you too, she replied, her hand on the doorknob. That's why I'll come back when this is over, whether you want me to or not. The promise hung between them, fierce and unbreakable, as she walked away to pack for an exile that would test everything they discovered about each other and themselves.